For this episode, we're going to tackle about the sharpening the tools for appreciation. To guide you discover the beauty embodied in a work of art is the basic purpose of this episode. Before we go into that part, let us first try to gear up by understanding few things. First, the ultimate purpose of art. The unification thought theory argues that we have now a decadent art. This decadence springs from the fact that we have a decadent culture. Art is the center of culture, so that once a culture is lost, art is also lost with it. Art fueled by the culture of society moves away from its basic purpose, that is to please God, who had been in sorrow since the beginning of the history of humankind. We cannot ignore the fact that artists today consider more the monetary return and fame from their artistic work rather than the thought of pleasing their creator. To make this explanation more specific, how much money does the painter collect from the priest in order to repaint the church? How much was collected by the local sculptor from the priest to sculpt the image of the Virgin? The services to make these things should have been free, like what Michelangelo did in the Sistine Chapel. God is the greatest artist. The universe is His greatest masterpiece. He created the universe out of the intention to obtain joy. Like God, artists should have also created artwork for the intention to obtain joy. Joy for them as artists endowed with a rare quality. Joy for their fellow humans, but above all, joy to God. Next is beauty. A student may say that many of his classmates are beautiful, while the others may give no comment. Is beauty only in the eye of the beholder? As said, how do we define the beautiful? For the Spaniards, according to Prosper Meremi, a woman to be beautiful must have three dark things. She should have dark eyes, dark eyelashes, and dark eyebrows. To a certain village in Africa, a woman with the longest neck is the most beautiful. Also in Africa, a woman with pouting lips is beautiful. To the Filipinos, for a woman to be beautiful, she must be white, long hair, and pointed nose. To sum up these characteristics, one will find an appearance of a Caucasoid woman, a Western look. So how could we identify the beauty of ourselves in the national setting when we consider the Western look beautiful? If such are the criteria to determine beauty, then who are the beautiful in the Philippines? On the contrary, how could one determine if she has beauty? Anton Chekhov, the Russian playwright, said, "If someone says you have a beautiful eyes or beautiful hair, there's only one meaning. You do not have that item you think about." Fortunately, it is not the point of argument here. What we have just dealt about was a pure physical look, which is not the only concern of art. God is the greatest artist. There is nothing ugly in His creation. Beauty is something that is beyond what eyes can see. Beauty is the value that giver or artist gives and the receiver, appreciator, receives. It is the value of art that stimulates desire of the appreciator. So, to judge the beauty of a certain work of art, the stimulation it creates to the appreciator is the parameter. Next is the harmony in art. This is about how beauty is achieved by the artist in his work. Our work of art has a purpose, and as we have explained previously, that is to please God and His people. Art, like anything else, is a product of different materials or items put together. Achievement of beauty relies on how these materials or items are arranged or put together by the artist. These arrangements or putting together all the materials or items depends on the craftsmanship of the artist. To come up with beauty, these materials are arranged or fixed in harmony with the purpose of the artist. There is no beauty if there is no harmony. There is no harmony if materials are not put together to meet the purpose of the artist. Next is the technicalities of art. Noticeable in the face of Mona Lisa are lines and forms mingled with colors so as to produce the greatest painting. The same things are observable in the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel Tower, Champ de Mars in Paris, France. It was named after the engineer Gustave Eiffel, whose company designed and built the tower. Eiffel Tower is considered one of the greatest achievements in the field of architecture. Its fame attracted thousands of tourists throughout the world every year. But looking closely at it, one will find that it is only a combination of lines and forms. It has no color elements, but like paintings, it has lines and forms. So now let's talk about the basic elements of visual arts. So first, we have the lines. We have two kinds of lines. These are the straight lines and the curved lines. First, let's tackle about the straight lines. These are the most commonly used lines both in art and in engineering. Generally, straight lines imply simplicity. A person is labeled straight if he is simple. He is extremely opposite to the intricately decorated fellow labeled as baroque. Okay, in the straight lines, we have three different straight lines. First, we have the vertical line, a line rising perpendicularly from a level surface upright. The fact that it is rising upward, it implies ambition, authority, majesty, and respect. Vertical line is seen in a man standing straight, a tall tree. These are impressions of dignity. Next is the horizontal line, a line in parallel to the horizon. These are lines or repose in serenity, reclining person, landscape of bodies of water, and picture of horizontal lines. So here is the example of horizontal line. Next is the diagonal line, a line running in slanting direction. These imply actions and movements. A running man, a bull fighting, and other actions are pictures of diagonal lines. So here is the example of diagonal line. Next kind of line is the curved lines. Curved lines suggest grace, movements, flexibility, and joyousness. They are never harsh or stern. They are formed in a gradual change in direction. Curved lines are of various kinds. They are, first, we have the circle. It is a curve that is loosey at all points in the plane and equidistant from a fixed point called center. So here is the example of circle. Next is the lunette. It is a kind of curved line formed like a crescent. So here is the example of lunette. So yan yung parang half moon lang. Yan yung tinatawag na lunette. Yung curve lang niya. Okay? So next is the oblong. So it is a kind of curve identified by its spherical form and elongation in one dimension. So here is the example of oblong. So yan yung iba't ibang uri ng curve lines. Next basic element of visual art is the forms. A combination of different lines would result to a certain form. As discussed previously, visual arts are only a combination of lines and forms. Next basic element is the colors. So here is the question. Is black a color? So maybe you are wondering kung ang black ba ay may tuturing ba natin na color. So, it is not a color. Because color is a property of light, so if there is no light, there is no color. Lines and forms give structure to a work of art, while colors give life to it. So there are three attributes of color, namely the hue, value, and intensity. Let's discuss first the hue. It refers to the name of the color itself. When we say the color of the dress is yellow, we are naming its hue as yellow. Blue, red, and yellow are primary hues. Mixing equally the primary ones produces secondary hues. Secondary hues are orange, green, and violet. Orange is a result of a mixture red and yellow. Ang green naman if i-mix natin yung yellow and blue. Ang violet naman kapag i-mix yung blue and red. Mixing together two hues would result to a new color. For instance, mixing yellow and orange would result to a yellow-orange. Orange and red will produce red-orange, and so on with all the hues. Some colors are so glaring to the eyes. Others are so soft so that people, after they have looked at the warm colors, they look at the soft ones to neutralize the sight. This refers to the warm and cool colors. Warm colors includes red, orange, and yellow. They associate with the sources of heat such as sun, light, and fire. They imply cheerfulness, joys, actions, life, and happiness. The cool colors include blue, blue-green, and blue-violet. They suggest distance, calm, savor restful, and inconspicuous. Color harmonies refer to the groupings of hues. There are two kinds, namely related color harmonies and contrasted color harmonies. Related color harmonies, this is a combination of several tones of one hue, like for example, orange, tan, brown, and others from the orange family. This is the agreement of different tones. It is also called monochromatic. If two or three neighboring hues on the color circle are used together, is called adjacent or neighboring harmony. Next is the contrasted color harmonies. It is referred to the disagreement or opposition of hues. There is difficulty in combining the opposite hues, but when they are properly harmonized, they give a beautiful effect. Another attribute of color is the value. This is the relative lightness or darkness of a color, or a quality of light and dark. Practically, knowledge on the value of color helps anyone the best effect he wants to achieve. So here is the example of value scale. So as you can see, diba, na sa value scale, makikita natin ang gamit ng kulay. Pwede siyang light, pwede din siyang dark. Okay, so next is the intensity. It is worth remembering that colors have psychological and emotional bearings. Sometimes, emotions are shown on the thickness of the color being applied. This is apparent in the Fauvism form of art. Fauvists like Van Gogh express his emotion by thickening the color of his objects. Red is associated with cheer, warmth, or happiness. A Fauvist, to express his feeling or happiness, taken the red color. This is referred to as the third element of art, known as intensity. Intensity is the brightness or darkness of color. It can be in the same hue but in different intensity. The color blue can be very thick or bright in the upper portion, but can be very dark in the lower portion. But it is still blue. Intensity can be described as full intensity, two-thirds intensity, two-third neutral, and neutral. So the who, the value, and intensity are the attributes of colors. So there are still other elements of visual arts. So it includes first we have the texture. This is the visual appearance of things. In sculpture, this includes the sense of touch that has something to do with the characteristics of the surface. It can be rough or smooth, fine or coarse, shiny or dull, and so on. In painting, texture represents the skin, clothes, jewelry, and other objects of the artist. Next, other elements of visual arts is the perspective. This is the painter's technique to make the object of his art appear as in the distance or in a depth. To draw a highway, painters use two converging lines. The two lines of a railway seem to meet in the distance. In a long file of things or people, the figures in the distance are smaller than those in the foreground. Objects seem to recede into the distance. This is perspective, the distant appearance of an object. Lastly, we have the chiaroscuro or light and shadow. The word is taken from the two Italian words chiaro, which means light, and oscuro means dark. This is a pictorial representation using light and shade without the use of colors. So, yung background natin, yan yung sample ng chiaroscuro. Next is we're going to tackle about the styles and forms of arts according to development. Men had already appreciated art long before they learned to write. Paintings were believed to have been mastered before the advent of writing were seen on wall of a certain cave of Cro-Magnon, France. This art on the wall has an extreme theme of naturalism. They are reflections of things seen by the hunting cavemen. Mostly, they are pictures of wild animals and trees. But as shown further, the development of art in the cave was not left behind by the development of the people from food gathering to food producing. Some paintings contain symbolic elements as modern arts do. There are paintings of fallen leaves to indicate summer, zigzag lines probably to indicate mountains, or seas fingers made stripes may represent rainbow. The first development is the Renaissance. It is the rebirth or revival of the classic. This is a movement in art that aims to bring back the classic art of the Greeks and Romans. But artists of this period were still free to integrate their own taste into the classic, although features of classicism such as balance, harmony, proportions, and intellectual orders were the standard of the time. Next is the Mannerism. According to chronology, Mannerism is situated between the High Renaissance and Baroque styles at the ending part of the 15th century in Europe, although the term was also used in the 18th century to refer to the 16th century artists who adhered to their Renaissance masters. Particularly, it spread to the European places such as Spain, France, the Netherlands, Flanders, and England. The term comes from the Italian word maniera or style. Manner is another word for ways or means. The Manierists still followed the forms of the artists of the Renaissance. They followed them as their inspiration and tried to perfect what the Renaissance masters had done. The Manierists continued to use wood as a support and also painted on marble, agate, alabaster, slate, and sometimes lapis lazuli. They produced a large number of frescoes with stucco decoration on the walls and ceilings of palaces. Secular subjects predominate. Next is the Baroque art. It is derived from the word barocco, an ill-shaped pearl. The word can be associated to an overly ornamented thing or person. A person with too much adornment is labeled as baroque. Curved and zigzag lines which express vitality and actions make fit to the standard of Baroque art. This art flourished in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. Baroque art rejects straight lines because in art, straight lines imply simplicity. Next is the classicism. Generally, the term refers to a work of art with quality and taste belong to the highest. The term also refers to the imitation of Greek and Roman literature, architecture, and art. Artists of classicism adhered to the traditional aesthetic principle and formalities, although they flavored their works with expression and individuality. Art belonging to this form could be characterized by its clarity, balance, order, unity, dignity, and symmetry. The three columns of the Greeks are still dominant in classicism. So, kasali po dito na example is yung ating Manila Post Office. Next is the Romanticism. This refers to the movement in art and philosophy that began and developed in Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. It was said that Romanticism is both an expansion and at the same time a reaction against the Enlightenment. Enlightenment means emphasizing reason and individualism rather than tradition. Artists of Romanticism emphasize the individual. It is subjective, irrational, imaginative, personal, visionary, and transcendental. It was said that artists express their own opinion on current events. Their canvases became vehicles of outpouring of extreme, impassioned, strange, melancholic feelings. Their landscapes are drenched in human emotion, mystery, and poetry. A gnarled tree, for example, symbolizes anguish and pain. The horse became a romantic motif on account of its spiritedness. Next is the Gothic art. This is recognizable by its pointed arc and rib vault. Pointed orders exemplify faith. Every important structure of Gothic architecture served to illustrate its upright position leading to God. As you can see in the background, yung pointed na bubong ng isang bahay, yan yung tinatawag natin na Gothic art. Isa ding sample nito is yung San Sebastian Church of Manila. Next is the Modernism. Modernization is characterized by the advancement of technology. This technology brought several changes to man's lifestyle, and this lifestyle gives birth to several artistic creations. Some modern arts that come out through recent inventions are photography, industrial arts, cosmetics, and advertising. Cinematography is also an art that emerged together with the modern innovation of man. The word modernism comes from the Latin word modo, which means referring to something which belongs today. It is a form of artistic experimentation of getting away with what was in the past. It flourished in the 1940s and 1960s in Paris. It is characterized with simple shapes and modern artificial materials. Next is the prerequisites to appreciation. We have already discussed much about the purpose of art. The artist does not paint something because he feels like painting. The writer does not write because he likes to write. There is something in their hearts that they want humanity to understand. We as appreciators of art have duty to do. We will not just appreciate art because we feel like doing it. We have a duty to discover the something that artist wants us to understand. To help us achieve understanding of the meaning of the work of art, here are the some points. First, we have the attitude. This refers to your interest in art or to a certain work of art. We cannot do something what we do not like. In other words, we cannot come into oneness with the artist if in the first place we do not like art. To make you understand things, make yourself free from any form of evil thoughts, abhor all worldly materials, because the meaning of art does not reside in this world. You try to practice contemplation, reflection, and discernment. Finally, try to seek the value of trueness. Next is the background of the work. If you are going to watch a ballet, experts say you read the background and other initial details of the story available in the ticket bill or in posters. This means to say that before the actual viewing of the art, you already have a ready knowledge about it. This background includes the situation of the place and time when that certain work of art was made. It also includes the culture of the people where the work comes from. For instance, the students after reading the story Mahamaya by Rabindranath Tagore questioned the plausibility of the story. The students could not believe that a living wife is burned together with a dead husband in a funeral pyre. The comment is a very clear manifestation of the students' ignorance of the culture and practice of the Indian people. In India, they have a practice called sute in which a widow is burned with the dead husband. The purpose is to show to the family of the dead husband the grief of the wife. The British government in India considered it a crime, so its practice was stopped. Be sure to know the differences between the culture of the Arabs and those of the Americans if you want to understand the movie Not Without My Daughter. If you want to understand the novel of Charles Dickens, The Oliver Twist, know first the socio-political situation of England at the time when Dickens mastered the novel. The same thing if you want to understand the novel of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, know first the farming situation and the economy of America during the Depression time. So it is necessary to know first the philosophy, religion, and even the personal problem of the artist when he created the work of art. Background knowledge means knowing the circumstances that motivate the artist to do the work. Next is empathy. While watching the movie, you cannot hold yourself from crying. In such a situation, do not control it. Let your tears flow. There is no problem with it. In fact, it is another way in achieving a successful interpretation of the art. Empathy means sympathizing with the sorrow of the characters. It is a subjective action which through it, you become more close and united with the work of art. Then, you obtain joy. Next is health. This refers to the physical condition of the appreciator. No one will believe that a man suffering from fever or any dreadful disease could come up with a good appreciation at the time when he is suffering from the disease. Because sound body means sound mind. Next is the location. This is the place where art is appreciated. The place contributes much to your success. There is a place for drama or ballet performance, but gallery is a right place to appreciate painting, while a silent place like a library is the right place for reading a novel. So this is all for this episode, and I'm your teacher May, leaving this message of Annie Alvers. That art is something that makes you breathe with a different kind of happiness. Thank you so much!
More gone.